you could make, and the spirit, the shaman, would make this mixture for you, and he would take a certain root from a certain tree and ground it up and make this ceremonial drink, and then you would ingest this substance, and the act of ingesting the substance was the conduit for you to access, to be able to see another realm, to understand sort of whatever it is. I know what they were attempting to probably try and understand, but I'm not going to discuss that because that's not part of the lecture. But your ability to understand some understanding of something, enlightenment, whatever. And there was a ritualized process in which the candidate was sort of made aware. At the end of this process, the candidate would just be, physically exhausted. You might throw up, you might be, God knows what you might be. You could be bloody, you could be in a whole other world of pain when you come back to your senses, right? That's some power, like ayahuasca is a powerful hallucinogenic, right? It's a powerful hallucinogenic, right? So just imagine after going on this psychological, and I think it's probably a 12-hour trip, right? Imagine going on a 12-hour trip, totally out of your mind, guided by someone who's putting you through a process for a reason. So you have to be, you're in this world, but you're not. You're doing stuff, you're active, you're physically exerting energy. Psychologically, intellectually, your brain is firing like crazy, and then you crash off of the high. You're done. You're completely wiped out. Nietzsche uses that as, this is my example, but that, I think this is the spirit of what he's saying here. I'm trying to take this very dense, what the hell is Nietzsche talking about, and make sense of it, right? This is the ghetto philosophy. So the ancient religions actually disciplined the pious, the believers, into a condition of exhaustion. I'm going to take you ceremonially, ritualistically, through this process of exhaustion, beginning with the ingestion, in which they must experience such things. When believe one had entered, that doesn't sound right. When believe ancient religions actually disciplined the pious in conditions of exhaustion, in which they must experience such things. One believed one had entered, I'll have to rewrite that. One believed one had entered a higher order of things where everything ceased to be familiar, the appearance of a higher power. Put a star by Note 230, right? It's just ridiculous. Nietzsche's ridiculous. And Nietzsche was a bit mad himself. Nietzsche wasn't all put together. All the screws. Well, then the idea of mad is sort of relative, because if he was mad, then I want that madness. Okay, so I apologize. I'm a little loose with the lecture today. What I've done is this note 230 is, I have to reword the last bit because I typed it wrong, but this is the note as it appears in the Kaufman translation. What I've done is I've identified what I think are not necessarily the most important parts, but the parts that are going to pertain to what I have, the intent of me doing this whole lecture series. So number one is the phrase more important. So this one corresponds to the idea of more important in my discussion of it there. So what I'm going to do now is deconstruct the paragraph to give you an idea. So here's the paragraph in full, and then I've gone through and labeled important parts within the paragraph, and then I'm going to discuss the significance, my interpretation of the significance of those parts within the paragraph. Hopefully that makes sense. This is why you guys hopefully are watching me, because it's not Cliff Notes, right? It's hopefully deep. Okay, so the first thing, the idea of more important. Well, what I put here for this notion of being more important, I'll get a new marker. This idea of more important. Number one. Okay, so more important. My considerations, this is me now writing, this is not Nietzsche. My considerations for my immortal soul, my sense of guilt, my sense of shame, my obsession with conforming to the rules and commandments, all of those things, takes precedence over my actual physical health. That's what that first bit means, right? So when Nietzsche says, Formerly, one considered these conditions and consequences of psychological exhaustion more important than the conditions of health and their consequences. What he's saying is, now we look down to 1 again, my considerations for my immortal soul, right? Me, actually I'll just do ABC to probably be better. Transcendence and salvation, the goal. Existence, where I am. Damnation, where I don't want to go. Right? My consideration for my immortal soul, right? My consideration for my immortal soul, my aspiration to get salvation, or my fear of death. I don't want to go to hell, right? All of that, my consideration for my mortal soul, my sense of guilt, my sense of shame, my obsession with conforming to rules and commandments, all of that takes precedence over my actual physical existence, right? So that I'm aspiring for transcendence, right? For salvation. I'm constantly worried about, fearful of damnation. And the whole time, I am completely, I don't know what to draw for existence. I'm like oblivious, if you will. I'm unaware of existence, right? So that illness plagues me, and the fact that I am sick, as I wrote, all of this takes my obsessions takes precedence over my actual physical health. I don't know what to do about my actual physical health, right? And thus I become more sick. In an extreme case, as I told you before, in the beginning of this, was it this lecture? No, it was in my last series. In the last series, I was giving you the example of parents who deny their children access to traditional Western medicine, right? Because they are unaware of the benefits, or they don't believe in the benefits of traditional Western medicine, or even, non-traditional Eastern medicine, right? But they don't want medicine of any kind. The only medicine is prayer, right? That in that example, that's sort of prototypical, right? It's a bit fringe within even the Christian community or any religious community. It is a bit fringe, but we do have contemporary examples, right? So all of that takes precedence over actual physical health. So that's sort of the first sort of description, sort of fleshing out what Nietzsche means by it being more important. My constant attention to immortality, of transcendence, and my fear of damnation, it being more important. A. So 1A now. 1A. Focus is shifted from physiological and psychological health to spiritual health. So that when I talk about health, it's not health in terms of existence, it's spiritual health. Right? It's spiritual health. So that I focus my attention on spiritual health rather than physiological or psychological health. And granted, I understand that probably the overwhelming, to be fair to the Christian community, right? And this not just be some gross generalization, sort of Christian bashing. That's not my intent at all. To be fair to the Christian community, there would have to be probably a more articulation of exactly these points, because the argument is, this might be a consequence of the Christian moral dogma or Christian moral ethic, but really the application as extreme as how it's being described is more fringe, right? It's more fringe. The idea is, though, and I think Nietzsche would say in response to that, and I'm not going to go for it and do, sort of hypothetically play both sides, because that would just be too much of an indication of how manic I am. But I think, in fairness to Nietzsche, just to have a rebuttal to that, I think Nietzsche would say, no, we don't have to go as far as the fringe, this extreme sense. If you're sick, you would pray for health. Nietzsche would view an attempt to pray